Hello folks and welcome to Edupedia World. I am Abhinay Gupta. So today we'll continue with the producer company. We have already had 2 lectures on this topic, and in those 2 lectures what have we covered so far? We have seen the various sections and also marked the important sections, the sections that have been appeared in your CA final examinations, the sections based on which you have been asked questions in your past examinations, right? And then when we looked at the provisions of this chapter, we have completed section 581A and 581B. In 581A, we have covered some basic definitions as to what is a producer company, who are the producers, what is patronage bonus, mutual assistance, etc. Right? And then we moved on to section 581B, where we covered the objects of a producer company. Right? So today we'll move ahead to the next section, which is section 581C, and most probably this will be the only section that we will be covering in this lecture. Right? Now, what is 581C? That is the formation and registration of a producer company. So today we'll understand in detail the procedure behind the formation and registration of a producer company. So, who can apply for the registration of a producer company? No individual, a normal individual, can do that. If you want to apply to form a producer company, you will have to be at least a producer or a producer institution, right? So a producer company is very much similar to a private limited company. It is deemed to be a private company for the application of this act, application of the Companies Act, but otherwise it is not exactly a private company. To be very precise with it, the constraints of the Companies Act will not be applicable on the producer company, whereas the privileges that the Companies Act give to the private company will be applicable. So we'll discuss in detail about the privilege and the constraints, actually the difference between a private limited company and a producer company, in the following lectures. Today, all you need to know is that it is deemed to be a private company, but is not exactly a private company. Like for example, in private company, you need a minimum of 2 members. But to get a producer company registered, you need at least 10 producers, right? 10 individuals who will be the producers, right? And apart from them, even if 2 or more producer institutions come along, they can get a producer company registered. They don't need a producer, right? Or a combination of both will also work well. So what have we seen so far is that you need at least 10 producers to form a producer company, or at least 2 producer institutions, or a combination of both with minimum 10 producers even there, right? So you can have 10 producers plus 1 producer institution to form a producer company, right? Now, a producer or a producer institution, the group, they will send an application for registration to the registrar, right? The registrar of the state in which they propose to register their registered office. They propose to hold the office, right? To the registrar of that particular state, they will forward an application, and along with the application, they will also give the memorandum and the article that they have prepared for the desired company, right? Now, the registrar will check certain conditions, and on fulfillment of that, it can issue the certificate of incorporation, right? So apart from the other things about the compliance and all the formalities, there are 3 basic conditions that the registrar will check. The number 1 being that the object of the producer company should fall amongst the object of section 581B. We have discussed in the previous lecture what 581B objects are. They are like the primary produce, the other facilities for production, the infrastructure building up, marketing, all of them, right? Everything which is assisting the production of the primary produce, right? Then the primary produce also includes the byproduct and the ancillary products we have seen in the definitions that we have done. So what the registrar is going to check initially is that the object in the documents that they have submitted are inconsistent with the objects specified in section 581B, right? And then they'll see whether or not the company is limited by shares, because as I told you, it is deemed to be a private company where the liability of the members are limited by the shares. So the amount of the amount unpaid on the share will be the only liability of the shareholders, right? And the third thing that the registrar will check is the compliance of Part 9A of the Act. So the producer company is governed by Part 9A of the Companies Act 1956, right? So once the registrar checks these conditions and is satisfied that the producers who have made the application fulfill these conditions appropriately, and if that is done, they will issue the certificate of incorporation, right? And when it issues the certificate of incorporation, it will be only after the satisfaction of the registrar. It has to be satisfied that along with the 3 conditions that the registrar has checked specifically, other conditions like the compliance of all the requirements in respect to the registration, the ancillary and the incidental matters, are these things also complied with, right? Because these are the basic things that are required for the registration of a company. So those basic requirements are complied and the 3 specific requirements are complied. If they are, then the certificate of incorporation is issued, right? And there is a limitation on the registrar. The registrar has to issue the certificate of incorporation, if everything goes well, within 30 days of acceptance of the document, right? When the producer or the producer institution, they give all the documents to the registrar, the memorandum, the article and other related documents. So within 30 days, the registrar will have to get into all the checkings and all the satisfaction that it needs. And after being satisfied that they comply with the provisions of the Act and the 3 specific requirements, then they issue the certificate of incorporation. And this has to be done within the limit of 30 days, right? So when they issue the certificate of incorporation, they register the memorandum, the article and other documents of the company, right? So now what happens once the producer company is formed after the incorporation, right? So once the producer company comes into existence after the certificate of registration has been issued by the registrar of the company, there are certain basic things that the company has to fulfill urgently, right? That is, number 1 is the reimbursement. Now when the company is coming into an existence, the promoters of the company, they have made some expenditures, the expenditures of legal fees, printing of memorandum and etc. to bring the company into existence and do all the documentation, right? So the direct expenditures of these promoters have to be reimbursed by the company once it comes into existence, right? And that will be done only after the approval in the first general meeting that they will be holding, right? So all the pre-incorporation expenses, the direct pre-incorporation expenses of the promoters will be reimbursed on approval in the general meeting. And then we see the effect of incorporation. Once the producer company comes into existence, once it has been incorporated, what happens? As we know, and we have already discussed, that it will be get into the nature of a body corporate, right? So once it is incorporated, it becomes a body corporate, it becomes a company. And for Companies Act 1956 to be applicable on that company, it is deemed to be a private company, right? Because we have seen that there is limitation on the liability. The liabilities of each member have been limited to the unpaid amount of their shares. So, but we don't have, and we have already discussed that the constraints on the private company as per this Act, Companies Act 1956, will not be applicable on the producer company, right? Like they need minimum 2 members, but the producer company needs minimum 10 members, 10 producers, right? They have a maximum of 50 members. They have a minimum paid up share capital of 1 lakh, and the other requirements of a private company will not be applicable on the producer company, right? All the provisions of the Act that is applicable on the private company will be applicable on the producer company so far as it is not inconsistent with the section 581. So whatever section 581 says, that will prevail over the other laws. We have already seen that. And apart from that, the things that are not mentioned in this section about the producer company, for those particular items we will be referring to the respective laws, right? So once it gets incorporated, it is considered to be a private company, and it works on the principle of mutual assistance, limited return, patronage, and patronage bonus, right? So this is the entire cycle, the entire flow of how a producer company gets incorporated, right? So if we go into a short revision of it, it is that more than 10 producers or more than 2 producer institution or a combination sends an application to the registrar of the state with the memorandum and article. The registrar checks 3 important things, that is the object falls in 581B, the nature of the company is the limited liability, and it is in compliance with the part 9A of the act. Right, and the other requirements of registration have been complied with, and within 30 days it will issue the certificate of registration. Right? And then when it is formed, when it is incorporated, they will reimburse the expenses of the promoters, basically the direct expenses, right? And that will be approved in the general meeting, the first general meeting. And then as an effect of incorporation, it will be deemed to be a private company and work on the principle of mutual assistance, limited return, patronage, and patronage bonus. So in short, that is all about the incorporation of a producer company, right? So with that, we'll end the lecture today. Stay tuned for the next lecture. We'll continue with the other sections in detail in the next lecture. So till then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you.